YouTube, it's Brian Phillips. Look at this Valiant 1.3. Probably looks familiar, but it's actually new. This comes equipped with the AR631. It is brand new recently. We've reviewed the original V1 and really liked it. And we're gonna show you what this one has that's special. Okay, so we got takeoff flaps. We got landing flaps, elevator, rudder, ailerons, and safe is on, safe is off. So we've got all the features you want, with the exception of, I believe there's no reverse thrust, and reverse thrust would be available if you could see the forward, it's within the telemetry data, okay? But we do also have ESC feedback for our pack voltage, which is really nice. That's something that we gain from the version 1. But otherwise, the AR631 is going to act a lot like the 636B that used to be installed. So let's show you some ground handling. Great plane. A lot of times this plane goes up against the timber. Okay, so we'll roll into it right now, get that tail off the ground. That's about 30% throttle there on 3S 2200, all the way at the back of the tray. Haven't even trimmed it yet, and look how good she flies. The 50% throttle is all that this plane has ever seen. Just so you guys can see, my stick is at halfway. Okay, full throttle. Guys, that's 3S, near unlimited vertical. Out of the takeoff and landing flaps. Actually, I was in landing flaps, guys, I apologize. Might need to trim just a little bit. Boy, this thing is just really, really rock solid. Let's go to the bull. You good?
Yep.
Takeoff flaps on right now. Look at that thing slow down. It's just amazing. Hey. Can you come back 3 steps, please? Thanks, right there. Man, that looks so good up against the trees.
Mm-hmm.
That's 40% throttle there, guys. Okay, we're gonna go through this little hole in the trees here. 50%, 60%, just in case the wind kicks up, and it did. Oh my goodness. It was nutty over the top of that tree line. I don't know if you could tell, but there's quite a bit of wind up above there. And that's one of the things you wanna know about this plane, is that it does okay in wind. It is not dead calm. It may look calm, but it's actually not. We have some upset atmosphere up here. If you look up in the sky with us, look at those clouds. We had rain just a few minutes ago. Upside down flight performance is phenomenal on this plane. It barely knows any difference between the up and the down. I do still have a little bit of trimming I want to do on the elevator. There we go. I think I got it pretty good now. If you guys ever notice the plane has an elevator issue where when you go to give throttle, it wants to nose up a little bit. I have seen this before, and I've had people ask me a bunch of times recently, actually, do you do a mix to correct that? And the answer is generally not. Take off flaps now. Slowing it down to about 30, 40% throttle. Just loves this, just goes at the exact right speed, about 30, 40% throttle. That looks so stinking gorgeous. A little bit more power in the turn here, just so I don't get knocked out of the sky, because there is some wind from our right wing to our left wing right now. We're about 90 degrees. Now we're 90 degrees the other direction. And look how solid this plane flies, even in a flat configuration. You see it get kicked there? The AS3X is trying its best to keep up, and I have to help it along just a little bit. Okay, we're gonna go into safe now. Okay, so here's safe. You can see it rock right into it. And look at that thing, keeping it. I'm off the sticks altogether. It's getting kind of wind vaned a little bit. Okay, I'm gonna turn sharp so we can keep the camera crew from losing their eyesight in the sun. That was full rudder. There we go, and then I'm just kicking about 25% ailerons in. And look how flat it is with safe. Safe is having no problem with this wind. And look how slow we're flying, guys. That's what's so cool about this. Okay, out of safe now, into AS3X, and as you can see, I immediately banked the plane a little bit more out of the flaps. This plane is basically a performance, it's a general aviation plane, a sport aerobatic plane is what I would call it. Now we chose to do the inside hole on the elevator and rudder, so we have tons of throw, just tons of throw. And that might explain why it yaws so instantaneously for us, which is great. I barely have to use the stick to get that thing to kick over. There's 100% rudder out of the throttle, and it still does a stall turn, no problem. Those wheel pounce are a little bit noisy. That's a little bit of a disappointment, but who cares? 10, 9. Okay, there's our 10, 9, 8. We're counting down here. Okay, full landing flaps coming in. 3, 2, 1. Takes a while for this thing to slow down, even with a little bit of wind at its nose. That's surprising. Man, that is just so bright when it shines the sun at us. Hope you guys can hear that thunder in the distance. It's super cool. Let's go up here and see if we can draw the lightning out. Cornholes with the best of them. Okay, let's see if we can do a little bit of floating here. A little bit of hammerhead action. It's probably just a little bit lacking on power for that. You could do it in the right conditions if it was really dead calm, or if the wind was super laminar, you could take advantage of it and do it that way. And by the way, I love the way this thing flies with takeoff flaps. I almost like it a lot better in that configuration than I do with just regular flaps off. And you guys may notice it getting jostled around a little bit. The reason we show you this today is because if you want a plane that will do it, okay, take off flaps, landing flaps now. Let's show them grass. Oh, geez. See, just so you can see the wind. It's incredible. And look at that, no problem at all, and we got into the rough stuff.
The windsock down there is very deceiving in the background.
Well, it's because right now it's going that way, but the wind is actually coming this way. It's very weird. So with the wind, take off flaps only, get that tail kicked up with the throttle. See, that's what I'm trying to say is this plane does it all, folks. Not only does it look good doing it, but it does a really nice job. Not quite STOL performance, but still, I'm gonna show you a STOL like takeoff and landing here. Jeez. Just so you guys can see how windy it is. That's how windy it is. Okay, so we're in the grass even. So let's see if we can get it to go. That's only about one plane length. So I would say that that is a STOL performance there. So short takeoff or landing, that's what STOL stands for. But this plane is just a very basic looking plane on the box. You wouldn't necessarily understand that it will do all these almost incredible maneuvers and do it on 3S 2200 all the way at the back, by the way, of our battery tray. And it's still almost on the nose heavy side is what I would suggest.
I love the differentiation between top and bottom.
Yeah, I love the stripes on the bottom. I love that they carried it to the tail as well. It really helps with orientation. And I also love the fact that we have these beautiful leaves on the trees right now. It is fall time. Both the camera crew and I are just getting done being sick. Thank goodness, that was sucky. And then now here we are, finally getting this flight in. We had a couple of days where the schedule just didn't allow, and finally here we are. What a beautiful way to spend an afternoon. Okay, about 30% throttle, waiting on it to slow down. And then right here, we'll see for just a little 3-wheel landing. And a little bit of almost a ground loop at the end. That was intentional because I wanted to take off with the wind this time, which is weird, I know. Noisy gear, biggest complaint so far on this plane. Otherwise, flies really good. Not as easy flying as the Timber, but very, very capable. And honestly, I kind of like the looks of this just a touch better. The Timber, of course, has the lights. It comes equipped with floats. This is available with optional floats. So basically, you have to buy the floats separately. But if I recall, the floats might be the same as the Timber anyway. So if you've already got the Timber, then you're gonna have the floats. Does really good in grass, surprisingly good in grass. Okay, out of the takeoff flaps, out of the landing flaps. We'll just go and no, whoa, there we go. Do a little more lawn mowing. There's a no flap takeoff into the takeoff flaps now that I'm in the air, just because I don't want to hit the trees.
You are significantly past your timer.
Oh, I am?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Weird that you should mention that.
5 minutes past your 5-minute timer?
I just don't want to quit flying.
I know.
Okay, 2200 3S. Let's go ahead and take another landing, and we'll try to make this a better one than the last one. Okay, so there we go. So we're down on the ground. Let's go ahead and check the timer as soon as we get that ground looped around. Throttle cuts on. Okay, so just scrolling over. Look at this. Look at this, guys. 11.6 nominal volts. Looks like we're about, I want a percentage, Horizon, if you're listening. We're about 45%. That is so nice. These smart receivers and smart ESCs are super, super nice. Having pack voltage, honestly, to me, the nominal voltage is fine. Not having every cell is not a big deal. It's not a deal breaker for me, but it is really nice when you get into the avian ESCs, you're gonna see the voltage of each of your cells. You can see a mismatch, you can see a sag, which hypothetically on a smart pack, you shouldn't get sag. But, you know, under high loading, especially in EDF planes, you will see that sometimes you're gonna get one cell that gets out of alignment. And then once you relax on your throttle, that smart chip will actually balance that cell out. So it's pretty incredible. This plane's gonna keep going, and what do we got for time right now? We're up to 6 minutes and 20 past our timer. So as per typical with the smart packs, I'm taking off, sorry, I can't just talk and not fly. As per typical with our recent airplanes, the manual suggests an incredibly slow or an incredibly short timer. And here it is, we're 6 minutes over the timer and we're still trucking along, no problem. So I can tell you that the smart packs have been just phenomenal for flight time on virtually every plane. Oh, let's go right overhead for once. We almost never do that. Let's go around and try to get a nice angle. You stay right where you are. I'll bring it pretty much right overhead if you don't mind. Okay, take off flaps. We have a substantial structure right above us. You guys can't see it, it's clear. It's like what the Pope uses. Fake news. So as you can see, this plane, it's got everything you need to do everything you could want to do. And it'll do it all day without any problem. I prefer to fly it like a general aviation plane myself, just because I think it's beautiful. And I'm not big on riding full throttle all the time. I think it's a little bit overrated. That's no throttle, upside down flight performance. Look at this, guys. It does just fine. No throttle still, take off flaps. Landing flaps, about 30% throttle just to relax into it. Little touch and go. There's certain planes that fly so good that I'm nervous that they're gonna look lame on camera. This is kind of one of them because it just does everything so good. Over the vampire killing zone there. Couple touch and goes there. We tried to hit both wheels on that and we were successful. Okay, so with the wind, full landing flaps, let's see if we can slow it down on the way by. Just so you guys can see how fast the wind's pushing it. About 30% throttle there just to keep my airspeed and ground speed good for the turn I was gonna go into. Okay, so some of you guys are gonna ask, can you hand launch this thing? And I would definitely encourage you not to hand launch this plane just because it's got such good wheels up, wheels down performance. But if you wanna see that, we can do that next. We are currently 10 minutes past our timer. Throttle cut is off because I'm gonna hand launch this, okay? Props hurt people, so be careful. Full throttle. As you can see, absolutely no problem taking off out of the landing flaps, out of the takeoff flaps, and here we go, just flying along. Got an absolutely gorgeous sunny afternoon. Beautiful clouds up here. Gigantic, gigantic clouds. Little presentation pass. All of a sudden the windsock is limp, which would have been nice a few minutes ago. Okay, we're gonna take it under the power lines here. Full landing flaps there, let it slow down and relax. Just looking for a nice, beautiful flat pass here. Just nothing, no bad habits. Look at the beautiful shadow on the ground, just makes it look so cool when you can really keep your scale in perspective. Let's watch the shadow up against the trees here, so you guys can kind of get a feel for where it is in time and space. Go a little bit closer to the tree line. You can see where it is now, relative to where the sun is. If you're anything like me, watching the shadow on the ground makes it so much more real, and that's the only drawback with that cloudy sky. It films a whole lot better because the camera crew can keep the exposure better, but watching that dark shadow, it really helps with depth perception. I get that question all the time. How can you see where you are? How can you avoid all the obstructions and stuff? Well, twofold: practice in the area, which really does help a lot. And then secondly, I watch the shadow. I look where the sun is. I have an idea of where to expect the shadow to hit. And then I use that as a telltale sign of how far I am from a given obstruction, whether it be a tree or some tall grass versus short grass, or the runway, or something else. Whatever it happens to be, a bug zapper like what I'm gonna fly by next right there. Camera crew, another bug zapper here. Now the thing that's most nice about the telemetry on the pack voltage is that your timer becomes somewhat unnecessary. Because here's the thing, folks, you're gonna get a critically low voltage warning, and when that happens, you better land like yesterday.
Yeah.
The good news is with this plane, it's so efficient, all you have to do is change your flap configuration to give yourself enough flight time to get back. Unless, of course, you're flying below the runway or at the runway height like I am right now. That's where you're gonna really struggle to get yourself back to the runway because you have to trade off some altitude for forward progress. So, if in doubt, you're getting up close to your timer, go full throttle, do a couple loops, feel the pack, feel if it's gonna run out. You'll know because it's gonna stop. Do a high G maneuver. Demand a lot of your battery. See, I'm doing just fine. I have no qualms with this pack going for a while. I'm just gonna go in a circle like this. We're at 14.2. 14.02 past our time. This is incredible. Oh, by the way, let's show you some safe. Okay, so safe is off, on. Isn't that just awesome, guys? Man, I wish I had that when I was learning. Now, we did technically, but we only had it in select planes, and they were always like kind of the lamest planes. At least I thought at the time. I have grown an appreciation for many of those planes that I once thought were lame, which is funny because you would think after flying a lot of planes, you would really refine your taste to what you liked before more so. But really what I've found is I enjoy a broader variety of planes. And, you know, there's some of these planes that I would have thought were lame when I was first getting into the hobby, I found have become some of my favorites actually, because you find out that they fly so dang good and they're so much fun and they bring, woo! They bring so much to the table. I don't know if you guys saw that, sure you did, but I about got kicked out of the sky there. Takeoff flaps coming in. I don't know if you guys can tell, but the wind is now at our back, which is a little bit awkward and strange because, you know, like it was going the opposite direction here 4 minutes ago. So let's go ahead and take off flaps, landing flaps. Getting the balloon out of the way. There's just a little teeny bit of it. Look at all the corrections. Okay, camera crew, we're gonna go on the inside. So if you wanna take just a couple steps, hey, wrong way. This way, perfect, good job. I wanna try to land on the 37-foot approach just to see if we can get that done. Got a little bit of a crosswind, so I gotta do it at an angle. Okay, so that was a miserable failure. Okay, so going up and over. We're gonna get into a different final angle here. And we're gonna take the low point over the top of the power lines here just to get our approach right, okay? Then we're gonna push it down, use a little bit of rudder to slow it down if we can, and way too fast.
Yep.
Doesn't look like we're gonna do a 37-foot approach, but we can try again. Sorry, camera crew. Okay, takeoff flaps, landing flaps. Gonna use a little bit of slip on the bottom of this. Trying to slow it way down, kind of riding the elevator a little bit. Ooh, three-wheel landing maybe? There it is, guys. Okay, 37 feet. That wasn't that bad. With the wind, of course, the wind, every time I'd come into land, the wind is absent. Now all of a sudden we feel some wind. We are currently 17 minutes and 12, 15, 16, okay? So 11.1 volts currently. So basically what I'm trying to get at is this thing is flying forever. Talk about efficiency here. Look at that, guys. Touch and go in the grass for your viewing pleasure. Just really absolutely no complaints with this plane. It is so good. I'm hearing manned aircraft, but I can't see because they're over the ceiling. So I'm going to bring it down below the tree line and keep it low and slow, just in case somebody pops out of the clouds. Yep, I don't see them. Do you see them?
They must be way further to the into the
they're
clouds.
over here, but
yeah.
I would not want to be flying a small plane in that stuff right now, because that's like how you end up dead and stuff. So we're just going to give them a second, make sure that we know that they're actually where they should be, which is about 3,500 feet if they're going that direction.
Yeah, I'm not hearing them now.
Yeah, they're gone. Okay, takeoff flaps into the wind. Try for a super slow takeoff. Oh yeah. Still able to push this thing around on 30 to 40% throttle. About 50% now because we got some wind all of a sudden. Goodness gracious, now the wind is going the opposite direction again. So I would say, guys, if you're looking for a plane that's, let's call it equal as good, but a little bit more aerobatic than the Timber Evo, less your reverse thrust, I would say that you have your ticket right here, guys. This plane is a little bit cheaper. It's a little bit smaller. It's a little bit more nimble. It's also a very solid plane. I think the Evo is an amazing plane. I don't want to take anything away from it. I just know that I'm going to get like 40 times people are going to ask me, which one would you buy? Well, here's the thing, guys. I have multiples of both of them. So if that answers your question to one degree or another, I can't just not use up the battery, can I?
Well, I mean, you could,
and
but you won't.
Yeah, I know, I'm not gonna. And by the way, folks, this is the true Maiden flight. We have not flown it before this. I flew it around in the living room like a model, like a toy. That was fun.
Man, the wind has really picked up.
I know, look how intense it is. And guys, just to show you, this thing does just fine. I mean, I would say that it would be more fun if it was dead calm, but it's definitely controllable. And I would say 10.7 volts, let's just go ahead and say that's spent. I am at, currently right now on my timer, I'm at 20 minutes, 31, 32, 33. Do you have it yet?
Nope.
Here.
Turn.
Just try. 20 minutes, 43 seconds.
Yep.
Past 5.
Past 5.
So we're gonna call this a 25-minute flight. Now I did land shortly after our initial timer and we talked for a minute or two. So maybe a minute.
Maybe a minute.
Because then I took off. I said, I don't wanna just sit here and talk. So the Valiant is just a great plane. I love the way it flies. I love the way it performs. We did go to the inside hole on the rudder and the elevator. I would say that realistically, I like having the extra authority on the elevator especially, but on the rudder, you could probably get away with just going to the outside hole. I think the AS3X isn't being challenged at all by that choice. But also, I did off camera, this is something I did because the camera crew and I were up against a little bit of a deadline when we were filming. I had to center this here and then over here, which ended up being just like, I don't know, maybe 1.5 or 2 turns on each side opposite one another. And I could have easily trimmed that with the ailerons. I don't mean to hide that from you. We just didn't cover it because we had shut off the camera and I realized, you know what, I'm just gonna adjust that quick. So we don't mean to pull a fast one there or anything, but I did adjust that. The elevator and rudder, we got those mechanically trimmed in the video. So you can watch that and just apply that same principle to getting these flat here and here. And then of course here and here. Love the plane, very good plane. If you're a beginner and you're thinking, hey, you know, it looks like something I could do. Yeah, you probably could. This thing flies really good and safe. It gives you a wide flight envelope. You're able to go relatively slow and also relatively fast for fun. But safe is not gonna limit you so much that you can't get turned around in tight quarters. So that's why I feel like, plus this 1.3 meter size, which of course speaks to the wingspan, that's a great size. You know, I'm 6 foot tall, just to give you an idea. And then it's even shorter lengthwise, which is not uncommon, you can see. But there's no reason you can't fit this in your average family car. I don't wanna have to take wings off of planes. 1.5 meter timber is quite a little bit bigger. Your tail is gonna be 1.5 to 1.75 times bigger. It's a lot bigger. Also, your wingspan is 1.5 instead of 1.3, but the chord of the wing is probably another 25% wider proportionally. So you're gonna end up with a lot bigger plane, plus you have a leading edge slat if you install the leading edge slats, which I would recommend, by the way. It makes it a little bit more delicate. So if you flip it upside down for getting it where you're gonna go, sometimes you'll run into a little bit of problems.
And this one doesn't have all the decorative antennas.
It's just very smooth. It's simple. You've got these little screws sticking up. It might catch the carpet on the bottom of your floorboards or whatever. But we would always, when we were transporting ours, we would take bean bags and set them in the back of the Traverse. We would put, Usually I'd take like, you know, like the F-14 that I've got, twin 50 millimeter, I'd plop that on the ground, then I'd throw a beanbag on top of it. Then I would stick this in and let the landing gear kind of nest in. Then I'd throw another beanbag on top of this, and then I would just keep doing that. And our beanbags were kind of like one day they were this size, and then like 2 or 3 years later, the balls get like lost somehow, I don't know, or too many big fat people sit on them and they get squished. So they end up being about 1/4 the size they're supposed to be. Perfect for transporting planes. I mean, absolutely one of the best ways. You got to have a thin fabric so you don't damage your finishes though. Because we had one beanbag in particular that was like really thick, almost like vinyl. And I wouldn't put it anywhere near my planes because it would damage the finish. These, that's a tip that works really nice. We'll have to find some and link to them on our description below because it just worked really good for us. That being said, obviously, as you know, we fly here at our property, and not everybody has that flexibility, and we realize that. Most of you are going to be going to a flying field, so you have to transport your planes. So that being said, some big advantages to this plane over the Timber would be sheer size. Flight times are phenomenal. Now, I'm not saying you can't fly a Timber for 15 minutes on the right battery, but you're just gonna push it. I know the way it is because you're like me, you're gonna end up pushing it. You're not gonna sit there and do 30% general aviation fly arounds like this. That's one thing about the Timber, that it's so capable that it dissuades you from ever just going in a circle and just making it look like a real plane. So I feel like this plane does that slightly better in that regard. Also, I feel like it has tons of power. You're not gonna have any issues with floats on this plane. I think the version 1 may have come with floats. I honestly can't remember. So just know that this version 2 does not come with floats. So I don't know how that comes into your price point, if you guys need to consider that. But I can tell you this, if you plan to fly this off floats, I've heard very good things about it. I have not personally flown this plane on floats. I have flown the Timber, very good on floats. It does come with floats, by the way. The Timber Evo comes with floats. It's also top load for battery as opposed to bottom load. Bottom load is not a positive thing, by the way, especially when you put the floats on. It's a real pain. But you can see my battery is ridden up against the opposite of the firewall. So it's the back end here. And the CG markings, you can see them on the wing there. I think it was 65 plus or minus 3 millimeters. And you can see we got a little bit of nose wind right now, so it's pushing it down just a hair. But it's very good. I'm right between those two holes, so right at 65 millimeters. Bounces out really nicely with that 2200 Smart Pack. That's a Gen 2, so no bounce lead on this one. And just really, really happy with the performance on this plane. That being said, drawbacks on this plane, they are just so nothing. I mean, like noisy landing gear, I could care less. It's not a big deal. Some people are gonna be really off-put by that. So just be aware, like it's not, you know, if you take white lithium grease, you could probably minimize that by half, okay? So if you can get past that, otherwise, look how great this thing looks on the bottom. We've got the black stripes. They show up, they look symmetrical. I love the way that it's finished. Everything on this plane is really pristine. I mean, the only thing I'm not crazy about is I feel like these decals could use a little bit of a refresher. They're just a little bit small. But beyond that, it's really, like, it's not even an issue. I just love the way that this plane went together. It was an easy build. It's good quality products. Everything was super well balanced prop. I wasn't expecting that. I thought this thing was be kind of turdy, but it's actually great. It wasn't noisy at all. I didn't have to balance it at all, which is really nice. I always like that, especially on planes that you might end up in front of a beginner. Some of those little details are the difference between a plane that flies really good and a plane that flies okay. And the beginner's not gonna know to check those things. So unless they're watching Brian Phillips RC and they follow along and watch one of our, you know, 15, 16, 1700 videos, whatever we're up to now. So that being said, guys, if you're new to the channel, we review this stuff start to finish, unbox, build, radio setup, and then we throw the flight at the beginning because of popular demand. From a couple years ago, we started doing that. And so you get a very good feel of how it flies with the understanding that I'm the same pilot in the same territory almost always. We try to kind of give you guys a basic understanding of the environment. We try not to fly in insane wind. you know, rain and stuff like that, but we do it once in a while just because we're up against the wire on production deadlines. But generally speaking, like today, this is not unlike a regular fall afternoon. You're gonna get some wind, okay? This thing does great in the wind. If it was dead calm, it would do greater. That being said, if you wanna buy this plane, you'll be supporting us if you buy it from the links in the video description below. The NX8 has been great. I keep saying that, I know it rhymes. It just is good, okay? It does every plane right now that you can get. Bind and fly from Horizon Hobby with very little exception, and we've done safe, flaperons, reverse thrust, and pilot fatigue setting on the F-18. Excuse me, F-16, 80 millimeter F-16. So just to be clear, you can pretty much do all the planes with the NX8. Don't get the NX6, get the NX8. It's like 50 bucks difference. You're gonna get more features on this that are gonna help get you through a little bit further. If you know that it's a stepping stone radio, the NX6 is actually gonna give you 7 channels. You can definitely do this on the NX6. The NX6 is awesome, by the way. I have one. But the thing is, I just feel like that extra channel to go up to 8 is gonna get you the reverse thrust stuff that you need. And also, if you have a flaperon configuration with retracts and reverse thrust, you wanna throw in some mixing for pilot fatigue like we've shown on the channel, you probably do want it, okay? If you want crow, you're probably gonna want it. So just go ahead and get the NX8. It comes with a lanyard then, like I wear, and it got the knob is a big deal on the AR-631 and AR-637, which we've been pushing hard for the last year and a half in the plug and fly configurations, because then you can do your master gains here. Now that being said, if you go up to the 10, there is a significant price hop. That's why we say the 8 is the way to go for now. That's not to say that you can't drop 2,000 bucks and buy the iX20 if you really want that. I'm just saying you don't need that to do most of the bind and flies that we review right now. Okay, the iX20 is awesome, and I would be very envious of yours if you get it. Same thing with the iX12. Very good radios. I would love to have one, Horizon, if you're listening. That being said, the NX8 has been very good. It does virtually everything you need. Oh, I also have one of these things too, which is super cool. When I go to charge it, I just literally have a magnetic thing that sticks to it. That's a cool feature if you want to blow some extra cash. That's a fun thing to do. But honestly, get the bigger battery, 6,000 milliamp hour, and you won't have to charge all that terribly frequent. Keep in mind the DX18, for instance, the DX line, which was the predecessor directly before the NX, they used to run a higher voltage on the pack. So it was like a 2S pack, you'd run up to like 8 volts and you'd run down. These things run on like a 5-volt circuit. So it's a different type of battery, and they do last for quite some time, but the stock 2,000 milliamp hour needs charging all the time. It's super frequent. So what you wanna do is get the 6,000 if you're gonna blow some extra money to get a premium configuration. So get the bigger battery, run the NX8. You could run this thing for years, literally years. We're up to like 60 planes in here right now.
Yep.
So that's really good. Back to the plane. Yes, 2200 3S does all that. Amazing. Very good performance, very cheap batteries. I mean, I shouldn't say that because the smart packs are pretty expensive compared to non-smart packs, but they're worth it. You can get, you know, 2 instead of 5, and you'll be way happier. I promise you that if you get that. Now, I'm not saying there's not better batteries out there, but they are very good. They're the best we've had, and they are consistent like nothing we've ever experienced. Not to say that we've never had problems, not to say that I haven't crashed and blown up some batteries. Actually, none of them have blown up. I had one that I crashed the other day, and I took the battery out and it was folded in half and it was still working. So you do check your batteries for safety. Anyway, guys, we love reviewing this stuff. We don't care which plane you buy. Just to be clear, the Valiant is awesome. If you like the Timber better, buy that. If you like the Ultra Stick better, buy that. If you like the Draco better, by all means, buy the Draco. If you like the Carbon Z Cub 2.1, buy that. If you want the Carbon Z Cessna 150 T tail dragger, buy that. We don't care which plane you buy. We're trying to give you a no BS review so that you can make a good decision with your finite RC budget, because everybody's got budget. Even if you got a big budget, it's still budget. So this plane is awesome. You won't be disappointed if you buy it. If you've already got the Timber, they may be very similar. That's my only warning to you. If you already have the Timber 1.5 Evo, you may think, why did I just buy this? It's like the exact same plane. Except that it's not. It's beautiful, it's different, it's smaller, it's fun, it runs on a smaller battery. It goes for a long time. Remember, the Timber is 4S capable. This one doesn't claim to be 4S, but I'm pretty sure you could do it. I'm not gonna do it just because it doesn't suggest it in the manual, but I know others have done it and had good success. So just don't listen to me on that because I can't prove it. Other than that, buy from the links. You'll be supporting our channel. Thanks so much for the patrons for supporting us. We've got some monthly patrons, so that's super nice. It does help. And we obviously need to grow that a lot before we can get to the next step. And the PayPal support has been very flattering and much appreciated. We appreciate that a lot because there's like no fees for anybody. So it's really nice, whereas Patreon is very fee heavy, like 18%. It's really bad. So PayPal is cheaper for everybody involved if you decide to support us in that way. But really, we think the best way is just buy the plane you love. And then you get what you want, and then the manufacturer send a small commission, and then you guys don't have to pay us directly, which is nice. So without further ado, stick around. We're gonna unbox, build, and radio set up this plane coming up next. Stay tuned, and thanks for coming. YouTube, it's Brian Phillips. What do we have here? It's a box. It seems strangely familiar. That's because we did it once. This is a re-release. You guys already know what it is from the thumbnail and flight. But this is the Valiant 1.3. This is a bind and fly. And it is a great plane. If you've never had it before, it is definitely something that you need to be considering. Oh yes, look at this. So why is this a re-release? This is a re-release because now it supports the AR631, I believe is what's in here. It just says 6-channel spectrum receiver with AS3X technology. So this has safe select on it, but I believe it's the AR631. So we're gonna confirm that when we get into it, and we're gonna do that right now. So just like the other ones that have been re-released, this one actually, I believe it's exactly the same other than the actual receiver. So I don't think they did anything with the ESC, but we're gonna find that out too. Okay, so let's slip it out. If I remember right, this thing went together pretty good. You see, I've got mine's upside down in the box. So I gotta flip it over like this. Otherwise everything is gonna pop out in a funny way. You see how it's all open this direction? Okay, and then that's everything that's in there. So we'll unbox this thing, build it, and then do the radio setup just like we always do, so you guys have a follow along. If you decide you want to set up your programmable or your computerized transmitter, we're going to be using an NX8. I believe we're going to run this on 2203 or 4S, but I have to refresh my memory to know if the actual 4S is allowed. So we use the NX8 and then Gen 2 in this case, 2200, 3S or 4S. So this is a 4S, this is 3S. So we'll see how they work in there. I already know this thing does great on 3S, but I don't think we ever actually ran it on 4S. So we'll come back to that here in a little bit for the radio setup part. But for now, let's get this thing unpackaged. Packaging is really good on Horizon products, pretty much always. I don't think we've had, but maybe a couple of different, very random, very small damage points. I think we had a little damage on our 1.5 meter Timber, the original one. And then we actually had a little bit of damage on our 1.5 meter Evo, which is strange that it happens to be the same ones. Different damage, but just kind of a weird fluke sort of thing. Other than that, and we've done so many Horizon planes that it's, you'd think we'd run into it a lot more, but we just don't. Okay, so that's a weird spot. Yeah, nice. I don't remember that. What if they redesigned this package? I kind of doubt they did. That's part of the wing joiner mechanism. This is part of the floats kit. This thing does come with optional, you can use optional floats, but I don't believe it actually comes with the floats.
I don't think so.
Ooh, that was not by plan. But yeah, it comes with the hardware to adapt the floats on. Okay, so as you can see, basically you've got almost the entire wing as a control surface. You've got your aileron here and then your inboard flap. Flap is big, by the way. Very easy to put the wings on. They've got these little adapters of plastic that go through the foam and help reinforce everything. And then this is where all the wires are nicely hidden. You can barely see that it's there. And then the wing is strong. There's a spar that goes out to the tip about here. Okay, so you got, that's a fiberglass spar, it looks like. And then this one is also fiberglass. You can tell because if it's black, it's usually carbon fiber. So the wing joiner will go in there, the wing rod. There's 2 of them on this plane, if I recall right. So this plane will put out some massive G's if you want to. And it's very high performance. It's kind of strange because it's one of those planes that when it first came out, it's actually been out for some time, but it's just been an excellent plane for so long. And in the 1.3 meter size class, that's kind of an in-between size. We don't see a lot of planes in the 1.3 meter size. We also don't see a lot of 1.1s. We see a lot of 1.2s. And I really love this size class because the plane is very easy to get around. You almost never need to actually take it apart, which is pretty good. So that's not super huge, but it still flies good and it's still got some speed to it. It can still carry a decent sized battery, so you're not buying strange sized batteries. I do not remember the landing gear being like that. I wonder if they did redesign that because, well, maybe it is the same. I'm not sure. But those are aluminum. They feel very sturdy. The wheel pants leave lots of room, so that should be no problem. Wheel pants can tend to be a bit of an issue on certain planes because they'll bind up the wheels and tires, and it can just be a really bad experience. So we've had really good luck with wheel pants on Horizon planes. Generally speaking, they're real easy. There's not very many bolts on this system. As you can see, looks like we've got some thicker ones, some longer thin ones, and then a few of these. And then I think part of this actually is for the float assembly. So we won't need all those. Okay, so now we're gonna go down to the horizontal stabilizer, which is taped down. And underneath the tape, there is protective foam. Another great reason why Horizon they just do a really nice job. There's always foam to protect the foam. We kind of make fun of them for it, but it's actually a great thing. So as you can see, really simple, but it does have a carbon fiber spar. It looks like there might be a little bit of a twist in there. That's strange. Pinch hinge, but there is reinforcement on it. It's got a piece of tape or glue or something. It looks like tape that goes down inside there. Can you see that?
You
that
can
shiny
see
part?
the shine, yeah.
Yep, so it goes about halfway down the hinge and then, yep, top and bottom. So that's always nice. It doesn't seem like a big deal, but that's the difference between losing this control surface after you've flown for a long time and not. So very glad that they go the extra mile on that. As you can see, that carbon fiber spar stops about here. So that's actually really good for stiffness. And there is gonna be limits to everything. So it's, I mean, you can actually bend out here at the tip. But if you're bending the control surface out there, then you're doing some crazy stuff. So, which this plane can do actually. Okay, so again, foam to protect the foam. I don't know how they got that to stay like that, but that's kind of nice. Okay, so it's well protected. This has a nice foam finish on it. It's real smooth, but the thing is, like, you'll still get this sort of nasty spot here. I don't really care about that because it's going to be hidden by the wing mostly. I would care if it was up on the front, but even still, it's a great plane. Bottom load, which is definitely not a desirable thing, but this plane is easy to flip upside down. So it's not like you're going to have lots of problems. I don't know what type of ESC that is, but it does have a smart plug on it. So I'm actually quite excited to see if that's an Avian ESC. I do not think it is. I just think it's a regular ESC here that just happens to have an IC2 on it, or excuse me, an IC3 rather. But there's no smart lead there, so I guess we'll have to wait and see if that's an Avian or not. And I will know how to tell by some of the menu structure on the radio. And there's your AR631. So again, we've got all these splitters here. They're already integral, which is good. So that's going to give us access to plug in our ailerons and our flaps and all that good jazz. And then, of course, the elevator and rudder servo. Just checking where this antenna is going. I do not like the fact that antenna is dropped down there next to that because there isn't really anything that this feeds through. Oh, wait, is that? Maybe it is. Nope, it's actually just a carbon carbon fiber boom right here. So as you can see, there's just a boom there. And that boom is not a tube that rides on the outside of a push rod. Because if that was the case, then it wouldn't matter if the antenna stuck right next to it. But you can see where the antenna came out. Okay, so I'm actually going to pull this back just like this so that it goes kind of up toward the front of the aircraft. And see, that drops that down there to a spot where it can be flat. And I'll probably tape that again here in a minute. Just to keep it out of the way. It's not a diversity antenna because I believe there's an internal antenna and then there's the external antenna on the 631. So, got some wing spars here. Looks like 2 of them. These ones are carbon fiber. I know for sure this one's carbon fiber. This one might actually be fiberglass. That's fiberglass. That's carbon fiber. And that one's hollow. And this one's also hollow. Okay? But it feels really stiff. I'm not 100% certain that's not carbon fiber. And I'm pretty sure that's fiberglass.
It's really shiny compared to the other one.
Yeah, I've never seen a high gloss on, well, that's not true. I have seen it before, like on the Draco, but that's a different thing.
Cool. Yeah.
You can see the fibers really good on that though. Okay, so one more surface, which is of course the vertical stabilizer and the rudder. Looks like it's a tape reinforced pinch hinge as well. So just looking at the way that goes, but there is a nice support mechanism down here that's gonna bring support to the other half once this wraps around the movable part of the elevator. A nice little simple wheel. I'm just looking at this really close. I think there's a black mark on it. Yeah, I don't think it's split, but that would be a bummer if it was. But either way, this is the tail dragger assembly on here. You always want to see nice support where everything attaches because these tail draggers have a tendency to rip off rudders. So having a tape joint right there, I don't know if you can see that. Can you get up there real close, please? That tape joint will reinforce that hinge, believe it or not, quite a bit. And it's on both sides. So both surfaces are gonna get us nice reinforcement there. So that's everything in the box. So we're gonna clean stuff up and come right back with the build. All right, so we got the Valiant unpackaged and we're gonna assemble this thing. It's a super easy install to get everything set up. It looks like a lot of pieces, but it's actually not bad. And just keep in mind there's extra components for the floats, which are optional on this. I can't even remember if the last one we did, if it came with floats or not. For us, it's not a big deal because we have like tons of floats and we almost never get a chance to use them because we don't have a good place to fly off of water anymore. We used to, and it was really cool. So, all right, so let's open the battery tray. And then the landing gear drop down here, okay? But you see they've done us a favor of actually taping this bind plug up on top. So that's probably not a very wise spot to tape that since you have to push this down all the way. And it does make purchase onto that material. Okay, so you need to undo that piece there, okay? And once you undo that piece, then you can go ahead and continue onward. This is a bind plug. You do kind of want the bind plug on this application because in order to bind, you can use the push button, but it's not very practical on this because the plane is going to be assembled at that point. And so you won't have easy access to the top. You can also poke a hole if you're strategic about it to where you can go down and hit that button. And I'll show you when we get it all flipped over. Okay, so we have 4 screws that go in here. Mm-hmm. These are probably the right screws. There's a bunch of different styles of screws in this plane. And Horizon has done historically an all right job of labeling stuff. Not exactly. These ones are real long and there's only 3. These ones are short and there's 5. These ones are for the top wing. I'm almost certain of it because they have nutzerts in the top. Then these ones are the type that bite plastic, but they're big. So I bet they're for the landing gear. And it used to be that they were all labeled, but now you just have to kind of do some guesswork. So this has that sharp self-tapping plastic. And then on the head, it's like a pan head. And it sure feels like that's right. Yeah, so we're getting really good purchase as that goes in. Okay, and you can see why I pulled that wire up now, because as you tighten that down, you would have been cutting that cable off. The cable that was taped in position where it would have otherwise been cut. Okay, so I'm just gonna go to the opposite corner here. And remember, the bind plug is only used to short the ground to signal. So the problem is if you actually dead short your power to ground, then you'll damage your ESC potentially, the battery eliminator circuit. So you don't want to pinch it between a metallic device like this. Even though it's aluminum, it'll still conduct electricity pretty good. Okay, so this is pretty small. Why don't we use a big screwdriver? This is a number 2 Phillips. This is just one of the China screwdrivers. So it'd probably be like a size 1. This is a 2. And yeah, that's way easier. I would not recommend drills for planes unless you really are in a big hurry. And if you're in a big hurry, a drill is still likely to break out the plastic in this little receiver bay. And my experience has been, if you break out the plastic here, you're gonna be in a world of hurt because it's very challenging to fix this because it bears all the weight of every landing. And then it transmits it to a lot of foam. That's the way they build these things, is every piece of foam that's in here is just basically designed to spread out the load of whatever it's bearing. So it makes a bearing surface all across this whole surface here, and then up into the sides and then around and underneath. So then when you have this moving around trying to rip out, there's lots of glue that can transfer it to foam. That's how you can make, you know, like a coffee cup airplane, you know, and they're still sturdy. Okay, great. So I don't even know if I'm gonna use this anymore. This plane stand might be a little bit in the way on this plane. We'll find out here in about 30 seconds though. Okay, so this is the horizontal stabilizer. So this goes on here first, and then the assembly sandwiches through. So these two little doohickeys shoot through. Maybe I can do it like this so you guys can see good. So this is gonna go like that, but it holds this in. Okay, so I'm actually gonna take this, and you can tell those invasion stripes or those racing stripes go on the bottom of the wing. So I'm just walking that in, and then I'm just slipping these through. You have to get the elevator into this little opening first. See, super easy. Then this hooks into the front. There's a little bit of a relief there. Just like that, and then it drops down and in. And you see this little assembly I was talking about earlier, that's where you're gonna get a lot of strength. So you gotta make sure everything seats together. And when you drop these 2 screws in, that's gonna suck the wing down and it's gonna clamp everything together. So you're gonna get good dissipation of strength, which is what you wanna see. Now, does this need long or short? Do you remember?
2 long in the back and then 1 short up towards the middle of the fuse. So there's 3 screws actually.
2 long and then 1 up toward the fuse? What are you talking about?
There's supposed to be another short one.
Where's the short one?
I don't know.
There's only 2 holes here, and then there's 1 right there, and that one's gotta be the short one.
Okay.
Let's look at the instructions just to reaffirm our theory. 2 long, 1 short.
Oh, yep.
Okay, so there's a short one in the back. There's 2 long ones that hold the surface in. So looks like this bag has 3 in it, which makes sense. So I'm pretty sure we're gonna need these 2 long ones, and then 1 of these short ones.
And then the rest of those go to the floats, I believe.
Okay, well, and we won't be reviewing that in this video.
Right.
We haven't done float planes for a long time, but we do have floats, and we have a ton of different planes that we can fly off floats. And if we ever find ourselves with access to a pond or a lake or river, something like that, we're gonna definitely do that because it's super fun to fly off of water. Okay, so I'm just getting that started in true fashion. With the Horizon plane, it immediately lines up and immediately starts purchase into the plastic components, which is what you want. And you would think, like, is there ever a time when it doesn't? Believe me, there are many manufacturers where that does not happen.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're just gonna tighten that down. It does seem like there is a lot of screw left. Do you see how much it's sticking up? I am very skeptical about having picked right. I agree that we looked at the whole list of items, but that sure seems long.
But it would make sense, you need 2 and then you have 1 extra. which we normally
Yeah, I mean,
add
I agree
one
with you.
extra.
It's making purchase now, though.
Okay.
Oh yeah, it's definitely there. See,
Yeah.
if it was too long, then you wouldn't be able to get that to bite all the way down. It's just kind of scary when you put a screw like this into plastic. If you put it in too far, it'll split. If it's not designed to receive a long screw. So, yep, so that's going in just fine. And then the third one is just a short one. This is really, really easy assembly though. We are almost done building this plane. Where we have like another one screw here, and then we have four screws on the wing. So yeah, so the assembly on this Valiant is very simple. The worst part is just verifying what screws are what. We have had a few Horizon planes where we've really struggled to figure out what goes to where. This is definitely not one of them so far. It's been somewhat pretty intuitive. Okay, although I still don't understand what's so hard about putting a letter on the bag and then actually corresponding to that letter. Yeah. Seems to me like that would probably make better sense.
They especially are labeled in the manual.
They're labeled in the manual?
Yeah,
well, that doesn't help.
The bags, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So this is gonna pass through this little plastic doohickey here. And then you just have to kind of align this manually. And then once you get that started, now I don't know how far in you're supposed to actually screw that. But remember, you do want some mechanical strength here because this is going to be contacting the ground, okay? But you also don't want to tighten it down so much that it pinches that so it binds up your rudder. Okay, so get it maybe tight to where it stops and then back it off like a quarter turn. Okay, then you've got free movement, but there's not very much play at all. You don't want any play, but you need a little bit so you can get this thing to move free, okay? So as you can see, it doesn't take hardly any effort to move it, but it is solid, okay? So that's the key, striking the balance between having it loosey-goose where it's just gonna walk out of there and actually getting it put together. Okay, so now the wing is pretty easy install. You basically just pull all the wires out of those holes, and then there's two joiners. There's one that's longer and it's very obvious it goes into the bigger hole. The instructions suggest that was carbon fiber. I don't think it is. This is definitely carbon fiber though. Definitely carbon fiber. Okay, so just slide both of them into one wing, then get all your wires out of the other wing, then slide this in. Okay. We'll just kind of drop this down. And my alignment on the second one was a little bit iffy, so I just slid that up, and now I'm gonna pull it all down together. See, it's very simple, makes for a super stout wing, very flat, little teeny tiny bit of dihedral. And then you have four wires that come out. Now I don't know which one's which, and that could be a bit of a problem if we don't actually know. So as a result, we're gonna have to verify by using the XBC battery checker. And Mother Nature is reminding me that we're running out of daylight today, which is a bummer. But it was quite windy today. So we said, well, let's go ahead and get this Valiant put together. So I just plugged in any random smart battery. This happens to be a 1300 3S, doesn't really matter though. And all we're looking at is we want to go into, let's go ahead and plug one of these in. And on the end here, there's a little minus to help indicate what direction to go. So now we should be able to click once and then go down to servo test. Okay. So that's pretty obvious that that is an aileron. Okay. So I'm going to just center it. I'm going to unplug it, and this is our aileron. Okay. Then obviously that means this would be the flap. And I'm assuming the flap is also going to have the short wire over here. So let's confirm my theory. Yep. Okay. So this is the flap and this is the flap. And this is going to be the aileron, and I'd rather not mark them. So I'm just going to do the same exact thing with them. And then all I have to do is just walk these over. And this might be an area where it'd be kind of handy to actually know which channel's which. So I had the camera crew read. Channel 6 happens to be, it looks like, the flaps. So I'm just gonna plug those in first. Just remember you get your brown to brown and brown to brown. Okay, so then the ailerons, make sure you untangle your wires if they're tangling. Mine weren't too bad at all. This is on channel 2. So you can tell which channel because it's labeled on the Air 631 on the top there. Or toward the front of the plane, if you will. So it's pretty easy. Or you can just set up your radio system and then you'll know because it'll actually say in the monitor mode. Okay, so trick of the day. We're gonna spin the wing a couple of times for cable management reasons. The reason we do that is because that tangles up the wires together and that way they don't drop down and hit your elevator and rudder and steerable tail wheel assemblies, okay? So you see that? Now that's just kind of tangled up. That's all you got. And so if you were gonna reach down and press this bind button, as opposed to using the bind plug, then you would have to basically add a place to pass a screwdriver through, and I just don't think I'm gonna do that. I'll just use the bind plug on this one. Okay, so as you drop that down, we're just gonna make sure that the wires drop down, and they are dropping in an appropriate position. And then this thing, this little saddle or whatever you wanna call it, just drops down in here. Makes for a really, really easy install. Now, if you have to take the wing off, yes, there's 4 wires that have to be manually undone each time. That'd be kind of a pain. So there's 1 extra in here. So I got that in my hand. Those 4 machine screws, you can see they're machines because they're not pointing on the end. We're just gonna drop those into the top. Make sure we get good, full, deep penetration. Okay, here we go. And as you can see, it just kind of tightens down right where my index finger is. You're gonna see it start pinching. And that's when you know you're pretty good. Now, I'm not doing like a star pattern or anything yet, just because it doesn't really matter. I'm actually good with that for now. I'm gonna just kind of rotate to this next one quick. This number 2 screwdriver is just a little bit too big for this application, I think. So what I'm gonna do actually is I'm gonna peel that out of there and just go back to my small China screwdriver. And I'm just feeling for this little gap. That's all I'm doing. Oh yeah, it's pulling it down now. And once it starts getting hard to twist, then that means you're pretty much tight. Okay. This plane will pull some crazy G's, so you gotta be a little bit careful to get everything tight. Don't think just, it looks like it could be a pretty, pretty tame general aviation aircraft here, but this thing is crazy. And don't let the 3S deceive you. This thing is insane. For 3S, it's very, very capable. And so that's why it's a great option for somebody that's intermediate to advanced, as opposed to just straight up beginner. The timber is way more forgiving in a lot of different traits, but I feel like this is a more challenging plane to fly. Now, is that more fun to fly? I don't know. I'm gonna leave that to your judgment. Some people prefer the timber because it's got LEDs and it also comes with the floats. So just keep in mind there are definitely some value differences there. And it's a real difference. So you gotta kind of weigh those things when you're making your decision between the Timber Evo, and the Timber Evo also comes with the Avian ESC. This does not have an Avian ESC. It's got a fine ESC. And speaking to the electronic speed controller, that's what runs the motor up front, and then also what runs. Okay, so as you can see, everything is nice and solid now. So I'm gonna just flip this upside down, and then we can get that thing in position. Now, we could actually fly it on a 1300 3S, but I'm gonna fly it on 2200, just because that makes better sense for this plane, in my opinion. So 2200 3S is what's recommended. That's what we're gonna stick with. And you can see you could get a bigger battery in there, but like 3200 would be about the maximum. So this is 2200, so you go a little bit bigger. But just keep in mind, you are gonna have trouble with your CG if you get too big. And I have heard of people using 4S on this plane, but I'm not gonna experiment with it because I like it. With 3S, it's got plenty of power. If you want it to be, more balls to the walls than it already is, then you can try it and see if it catches on fire and let us know in the comments below, which you guys already know this, but we reply to comments. And so if you have questions or concerns that come up, just let us know. We'll do our best to answer your concerns. I I think I'm gonna grab a bind plug from here. Or do we have a bind plug sitting there? It did come with a bind plug, right?
Yep, it's in the bag, big bag. Okay.
So you have it? Mm-hmm. Why don't you show the people?
It was in the
Okay, so there's a bind plug. So we'll have that ready to go. And then I believe the way this works is pretty straightforward stuff. I believe we plug it in. That is keyed. So if you don't plug it in the right way, it's real hard to get it in there. You can actually force them in wrong. Okay, so now the next thing we need to do, we have the bind plug installed, but we aren't actually ready to bind yet because we have to do the radio setup, which is what we're gonna do now. So we'll go ahead and do that right away. So we'll pause and come back. Okay, so we're gonna do the radio setup on the NX8 right now. So this procedure is not gonna deviate that much from the old AR636, but we just wanna show you what it's like. So come on around. So we're currently on the Carbon Z Cessna 150, so we can click into the function list, scroll down to system setup, click disconnect RF. You'll see that goes that way. Then we're gonna model select. We turn away the camera just in case we have something you haven't seen. Okay, then it brings up create new model. So it's an acro, which is an airplane. We'll create, takes a few seconds for this to happen. Then you're gonna go to page 4 for the Valiant in this case. And it's gonna show you the computerized transmitter setup. So we're an NX8, so it's down in this little area here, okay? So you gotta look up at the top for some dual rates and then down here. I'm not gonna follow their dual rates. I'll show you what I do. It's a little bit different, but it's also gonna give you a similar result anyway. Okay, so first thing we do is we name our models. This is number 60 : space, and then of course it comes up with an A. We are using a legacy keyboard, so we will scroll in the Valiant 1.3 V2 and come right back. Okay, so Valiant 1.3 meter V2. Now why V2? Because I've got another one in my models that is a V1. All right, so then aircraft type. This is where you have to set up your wing. And it tells you right in here, it says aircraft type, model select, aircraft type, 1 aileron, 1 flap, okay? Now this stuff I know, but I just show you how I figure it out by showing you in the manuals because it's just easy to follow along. Now this is a bind and fly profile you can get for this plane too, but I don't do that on this channel. And I know some of you guys would like me to do that, but unfortunately for you, in this case, I'm going to make the decision to teach people how to do these things as opposed to just showing you how to download something, because anybody can just go download something. Okay, so the first things first, we're gonna do dual rates and expo. Actually, you know what? We're gonna just stick to throttle cut first. Okay, so I'm setting it to switch H. Then I move the stick. You can see, whoops, I didn't actually acknowledge switch H. Now that I've clicked, I can test it. You see how it's not changing on the throttle down here in that little monitor? Now when I turn off throttle cut, it moves free. I'm gonna put throttle cut on, then I'm gonna walk down to timer. Didn't mention the timer.
5 minutes, but it's back a page if you want to double check.
They're suggesting a 5-minute flight time, okay? And that's with the recommended battery, which is 2200 3S30C, okay? So we'll just scroll into 1 time and active. That means when they move the stick over 25% in this case, it's gonna start counting down from 5. I don't want any alarm at 1. I don't want any warning at 20. And I do want a voice countdown at 10 with the expiration, tone, and vibrate. And you can see it's already counting. So if I want to clear it, I just hit back. Okay, now let's do dual rates and expo. This is kind of my standard setup for 3 channels of control axis. So I'm going to attach it to switch F. I'll set it to like 5. Then I'll set it to like 10. And then I'll set the top setting to about 20 with the rates down to 90. You'll notice it's a progression from almost no expo to some expo. That's where we're gonna start. And then doubling and then even bringing the rates down in this case. So this is very deadened sticks. This is very sensitive sticks. And this is where we're gonna start right in the middle, okay? Then we just do the exact same thing on elevator and we do it on rudder. Now, why do we do the same setup all the time? Because it's so easy to set up, and I found that it's almost universally perfect starting in this. And then what we do is sometimes if you have an extra sensitive plane, we'll double that. We'll go to like 20 And then in the half mode, like on a 3D plane, we might leave that at 0 or a negative value. And then on the double, we may go double, like double 20. So you'd end up with like 75% rates, and then you'd go like 40% for expo. But you want to stay away from that 50% magic target. That's where your AS3X starts getting screwed up by the expo. If you don't know what expo is, just try it sometime. It's going to make it softer in the middle of the sticks. It makes the plane a little bit easier to fly. It doesn't auto level. It's not safe. All it does is it just changes the amount of output at the very center of the sticks. So when you're new, it's very challenging to get that muscle memory for that really finite control. Plus your overwhelming spring pressure on 2 different directions on the mode 2 over here for your elevator and ailerons. And then over here, you've got your rudder along with throttle. And of course, sometimes, especially new people, they have a hard time with giving rudder input as they go through the sweep of the throttle. So you learn how to control those undesirable traits when you're doing this. It's not hard. It just takes a little bit of time and practice. Okay, so throttle cuts on, sticks are down. Everything should be ready to rock and roll except for safe. We'll have to set that after we've started this. So bottom load batteries are always less desirable in the sense that I don't want to have to load from the bottom, but that's just the way it is. I don't like where this battery comes out. See this? So what I can do is I can actually take this whole ESC as loose. And yes, that's just a regular E-flite ESC. It says smart brushless ESC though. So I don't know. I don't think it's an avian though, because an avian would give us thrust reverse. That's the only reason I care.
Right.
So let's just plop this in here. These are all kind of stuck together. It's not the way you would normally fly your plane. You'd separate these out. And then what you'd do is this is the mid-grade. It's not the lowest quality straps, but it's not the highest quality, that's for sure. And to be honest, you don't need a whole lot more than this because that'll work just fine for what we're doing. And the sensitivity of CG on this plane, I would say that it is somewhat CG insensitive. And I say that a little bit loose because I know some of you guys are new pilots and you're like, well, but I don't understand what you mean by that. What I mean is the thing is going to be quite forgiving with a 2200 3S, which is what's recommended. In terms of getting the CG just right, it's at 60. They suggest the CG should be at 65 plus or minus 3 millimeters. So we'll just go ahead and mark the plane right now so that you guys can see how we do this. It's got blue markings on the bottom, right? Or is it black?
Black, actually, on the back, or on the bottom.
So normally I mark them with just a Sharpie, a felt tip marker, and we just grab out the calipers, turn that on, and we go to 62. Yep. Okay, so we'll go to 62, like this. And 62 is from the leading edge right in front of where this plasticky strip goes, which makes sense. That does stand to reason on this plane. So I'm just gonna actually lay this down for now. And I'm just gonna pierce it with the tip of my calipers right at 62 there. I'm gonna try to bring it out about the same distance. And then I'm gonna go out to 68. That's 65 plus 3 millimeters because there's plus or minus 3. And I'm gonna go ahead and mark that at 68 as well. And then same thing over here, we're gonna do the exact same thing. So basically what you've done is you've established 2 spots, a front and a back. And I just take the marker and follow those holes. So it makes it really easy to see them, but also a bit ugly. You may decide you wanna mark them in a different manner. And we've heard about 4,000 different great ideas on how to do this, from as simple as push pins to using tape and glue, which we used to do, to all sorts of other ways to creatively hide that. But I don't want to hide it. I want to see it. So that being said, we're not even going to test the CG yet. When we're all done with the binding process, you'll note that we didn't hook up the elevator or rudder yet. That was intentional, okay? So the first thing we need to do is let's go ahead and look through this manual here. Later in the manual, there's some instructions on how to bind with Safe Select on or AS3X only on. And that's right here. So this is what we're gonna be doing is with Safe on. So we're gonna install the bind plug, then we're gonna remove it, then we're gonna bind. Okay? If you wanna just have AS3X on, you just bind it like any other plane. You just put in the plug, you bind it, and then you take it out when you're done. Okay, so you'll note that I have it installed here. We have the correct model pulled up, throttle cuts on, stick is down. That's to protect yourself from the prop spinning on you. I don't trust any plane until I know. And so this is trustworthy once I have seen the throttle cut work. So I'm just gonna kind of imagine that thing spinning in a scary situation. Don't want to get the family jewels just quite stuck in there under full throttle. That would be a very, very bad ending to a video. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to take this and I'm gonna plug it in, shut off my transmitter first actually, because we need to, once that orange light goes off, you're good to go. Okay, all right, so now look what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna plug in the battery. Now, I'm not gonna worry about anything else. I'm just gonna go ahead and unplug now the bind plug. Then in this case, I'm actually just gonna plop the lid on, just because it's just as easy to kind of get that out of the way. I'm kind of looking out the window thinking, do you think we can get this done before the sun goes down? And I keep thinking, probably not. Okay, so we're just gonna drop this down, lay it on its wheels, and then I'm gonna take and press and hold the bind button while turning this on. You can probably show this right now because we can't see inside, obviously. Bind failed. Okay, so if the bind fails, I click and scroll down to bind, and at this point I step back and then I do it again. It's just all about distance. See? Come over here more. Go back into bind, trying it again. There we go. It is so funny because I could bind 100 times off camera and it will always bind on the first try. Yep. As soon as I do it on camera, I'm always trying to get in close so you guys can see what's going on, and we always have that problem. Okay, so first things first, we never set up flap mode, so there's no activity on the flaps, and all the stuff is basically ambiguous. I don't know if it's working or not yet because it's not hooked up, and that's okay because we're not really worried about it yet. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna flip this plane over, and you'll note that the ailerons are dancing. That's because we're in safe, okay? So we don't want safe on when we hook up our elevator, okay? So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna scroll over to monitor and see if the gear is working. Gear's working. Okay, so throttle cuts on, sticks down and in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, you can see the difference. We're going in and out of safe, okay? So now we have safe on. How can you tell? Flip the plane over, it's trying to find the quickest route to level. So now safe would be off in this condition. I want to flip that. So I'm going to click, go to servo setup, click in, travel, scroll over to reverse, and I'm going to reverse gear. Okay, walk out. Now safe should be off. You can tell it's not on because it's not trying to find level. Now it is trying to find level. Okay, cool. So now that safe is off, we'll go ahead and plop this thing back up here just to make it easy to film. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and hook up our elevator and rudder. Before we continue with the rest of the radio setup, we have to have those hooked up. And the reason we wait to do that is because now we can center everything, okay? So you can see this is gonna be way over if we hooked it up right now. So we wanna center this by taking and kind of screwing this in, the clevis on the end of the control rod until we get it to where we want. Now I'm gonna go to the inside hole because I want lots of deflection. I'm sure that if you're a new pilot, do it on the outside hole. It'll make a big difference. It'll help kind of make things a little bit more tame and more easy to fly. Okay, so I'm gonna slide this little gas tube back, fuel tube back. Let's see if we can get this to, yeah, see, that'd be pretty good right there, but I gotta go just a little bit further because I'm going to the inside hole.
And if you're a new pilot and you're wondering why you don't do this with safe on,
if you're doing it with safe on, then you'll end up having this auto correcting. It's gonna try to find level while you're doing this, which means you're gonna put it in the wrong hole, okay? Or you're gonna put it in the wrong position. So your elevator's gonna end up like trying to do this or trying to do this and you're centering it. Then when it uncenters, it's gonna go to the wrong position. So yeah, so that's a good point to bring that up, thank you. This needs to come over half a turn more. One more half a turn. And then all that does is that just mechanically centers the rudder, okay? And do not discount these steps. These steps are critical to making this plane fly good. You want that thing just dead nuts centered. If it's not dead nuts centered, you will suffer from poor flight performance, okay? So you see how perfect that looks? Does it look pretty good? Then you just pull that collar back up and you should be good there. Now, the rudder's working. okay? Okay, so we're good. It is hitting a little bit, but that's all right. I'm fine with it. Now on the elevator, same thing. I'm gonna go to the inside hole. That's gonna give us more output, and we are really close to being right. Mm-hmm. Actually, show them from that. Yeah, show them from your side. From here. Yep. Looks like it's just, I mean, if anything, it's just up, like just barely, so half a turn maybe.
And that might overshoot.
I know, and then it'll be the same the other way.
Yep.
Okay, so let's try this. Okay, so just putting that clevis onto the inside hole in my case. Now the manual may call out the outside hole, but I really don't care in this case. If it's too sensitive, I can always put it back. It's a very easy change.
I think that's good.
Looks pretty good.
Yep.
So now the amount of deflection will be pretty severe. That's not too bad. Show the people what I'm talking about here though. See how it's kind of hitting? Mm-hmm. Excuse me, guys. I'm actually okay with that. I think it's gonna be so minor that it's not an issue. Okay, great. So now we can flip this thing back onto its belly. Let's check the CG now that we have it actually together. We got to do the flaps still. So all I'm doing is I'm finding this with my middle finger, and I'm going to the front hole, and it's good. Just a little bit of nose down attitude. That's fine. On the back hole, it'd be quite nose heavy. So really, this battery as positioned, it really could use a little bit more back like that, okay? Which is about where it wants to be no matter what I want. Just for the simple fact that you need somewhere to put your leads, okay? So let's just plop this in there again. Plus that makes this close a little better. Okay, going back in and testing. Now we obviously already tested our throttle cut because I have that thing right next to my face. And also showing where my wrist is. If that thing turned on right there, you see how my wrist is just outside of where the prop is, okay? You gotta be a little bit mindful until you can trust the plane, okay? If you're in any doubt, just take the prop off. It doesn't take that long. Most people that get hurt in this hobby are getting hurt from props hitting them or batteries that they have issues with. So just avoid those two things and you're pretty much not gonna get hurt. Elevator, and you're like, but what if the airplane hits me in the face, Brian? Well, try not to hit yourself in the face.
You'll probably duck.
Yeah, you'll probably duck. You'll hit somebody else in the face. So, and yes, that does happen occasionally, but it's a very rare thing actually. It just doesn't happen as much as you would think. Okay, so let's go ahead and rotate this and point the plane away from us for easy figuring. Okay. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna control surface test, elevator up, elevator down, rudder left, rudder right, roll left, roll right. And now we need to set up our flap mode because we never set that up. So we'll click into the function list, scroll down to flap system. We're gonna make an assignment to switch B. And it actually did outline this and I just kind of honestly forgot to do it. So my apologies, folks. Here it is. -100, 0, and then +100 with a 3% and 8% correction with a 2-second deployment. So we're just scrolling in -100 and look what happens as I scroll because I'm in that position right now. Okay, so we'll just go to -100, then we'll go to +100. So there's takeoff. And here's landing. Okay, takeoff right there, and then landing. Okay, then we're gonna set the time to 2 seconds. Now watch what happens when I'm done with that. See, it takes about 2 seconds worth of throw. Now we wanna set up some tie on the elevator. They want 3 and then 8. So when you do takeoff flaps, it's gonna go down 3%. And then when you do landing flaps, it's gonna go down 8%. And you're like, well, Brian, why would I do that? Well, the reason you do that is because when you deploy flaps, if you don't know what flaps are the inboard portion control surface. So the ailerons are on the outboard portion, which means the far side of the wing, all the way out, away from the fuse. This is the elevator. And then this is the rudder, steerable tail wheel. These are the inboard flaps. So they go down like this. And what they do is predominantly, they change the shape of the wing. So a wing does two things. It creates lift and drag, generally speaking, in aircraft. So when you're flying along, there's an airfoil shape that creates a low pressure system which sucks upward, okay? So it pulls up on the wing. Well, when you deploy the flaps, or when you put the flaps down, into a full flap setting like this, or a takeoff flap setting, you change the shape of the wing, which also changes the angle of attack on the plane. Okay, so when you deploy that, it's gonna wanna actually kind of point up a little bit and then up a little bit. And it's very strange how that works. But then you correct it with this elevator. You can also slow the plane down a lot, but who wants to do that? I'd rather just deploy the flaps at a reasonable rate and then use that to slow the plane down like brakes, okay? You're gonna put the brakes on, they're gonna fly right by. Trust me, I learned that when I was young, when I was about 6, says Tom Cruise. There you go. So there you go. So that's basically fully set up. So the reason that the elevator correction happens is because there's a balloon. When you deploy those flaps without a correction, the plane's gonna wanna go up like this. Now, maybe not that excessively, but it might be just like a slow sweep. It's almost like, why do I need to trim my plane all of a sudden? Well, that's what that thing does. And that deploys at the same speed of 2 seconds. So if you set this to 100, it would take 2 seconds to go all the way down to minus 100 or plus 100, depending on which direction it's traveling, okay? Now, first of all, you're not gonna do 100 because then you're not gonna have any elevator left here, okay? But there are planes that require a lot of correction, like sometimes 20, 30%. So, and you'll note that takeoff flaps usually take just a little teeny bit more than the landing flap steps. So in my case, it's usually like 60, 40 more. Not, in this case, 3 and then 8. Okay, so 3 and then 5 more. That's unusual. So just so you know. Okay, all right, so that pretty much gets the plane totally set up. Everything is bound, everything is working. We have the CG worked out and we're satisfied with that. And 2200 3S, let's just go ahead and test the power. I'm gonna go ahead and hold the plane. You good? Mm-hmm. Okay, throttle cuts off. Prop sounds good. Throttle cuts back on and tested. Tested, meaning it's not going, okay? So that's important, it's a good safety feature. And throttle cut is probably the #1 way you can keep yourself safe in this hobby, between that and learning how to fly with an appropriate plane. And then of course, getting smart batteries helps a lot because they automatically discharge. Discharging your packs when you're done using them is a very good way to keep the chemistry intact so you don't have batteries that are like really puffy and they start looking round and start catching on fire easily, which I'm not joking. Lithium polymer batteries are probably the #1 most dangerous thing in this hobby. And the #1 best way you can prevent having a problem is to keep them discharged when not in use, which means 3.8 volts, not 0. If you put them to 0, they're gonna catch on fire. So that being said, 3.8 volts, when you're charged, you're at 4.2, and when you're discharged fully, you're at like 3.3, maybe, you know, like 2.9 or 3 on a really bad over discharge, okay? 2.5 or 2, you're gonna start puffing that pack almost certainly. And then the next thing you know, you're gonna have one of them that wants to basically catch on fire. So just be careful about that. That's what happens when lipos fail. But at 3.8, they'll sit there for a long time. So smart batteries have a chip inside of them and they actually discharge themselves. So there's this extra lead that is a data lead in addition to the discharge lead. So this is the main discharge lead. This is an IC3, and that's what that data line hooks up to that bare conductor there. That's just for data. And then underneath this little part of the battery, there's a little chip inside of here, and that automatically balances each of the cells. This is a 30C pack, so that speaks to how fast you can discharge this. And then it has a max charge rate listed here of 5C. So 5C is 5 times 2.2 amps or 2200 milliamps, which is a thousandth of an amp. So you can charge this as much as 11 amps. And that's really fast. So you can actually inject 11 amps into this thing in this relatively small battery to charge it really fast. So like if you're going to the flying field, you can hook it up to your smart charge and you can really pump some juice in there. Now, just a little side, but you didn't hear it from me. These batteries automatically balance themselves. So even if it's not a smart pack, as long as you control what's going in and you don't do it so fast that it can't keep up, then it's gonna actually keep itself balanced, which is really nice. That's something that they don't talk about because it's contrary to their sales things. So these Gen 2 smart chargers have been really good to work with. The S2200 is probably the best value. You're getting two. It's got a color screen, which is nice. I'm not a huge fan of the arrows. I feel like they're counterintuitive, but like who cares? It's not that big a deal. You get used to it after a while. Yes, this is a single channel, but it's almost as expensive as this. So like if you're gonna spend this kind of cash, which is like, I think these are like darn near 300 bucks now. And I don't talk about price because you'll be watching this video in 2 years and you'll be like, Brian, you know, like why, you said it was 300, now it's 310. I'm sorry, I don't control the pricing. I just know what they cost because they're expensive. So if you're getting the S2200, if you're thinking about the S1200, just seriously buy this. You know, it's like 50 bucks difference. Just get the bigger one. You're gonna use it immediately. Plus these have the larger battery leads, so you can hook up your big 6S packs when you get to that. This is an IC5. And then of course, if you need to do the real little stuff like this, then you gotta get adapters. This is an IC2. And there's a lot of compatibility in the connectors, and we talk about that a lot on this channel. So if you're not familiar with it, and this is the other reason why smart batteries are so nice, because you literally just plug it in and it starts. Once you set it up, it's done. You don't have to mess with it, it just goes. So like it's initiating it, test timeout. That's probably because this one just got charged about 2 minutes ago. So at any rate, it's very nice to have these things. We have them set to 240. Oh, plus there's a toggle switch on the back, which is nice because I leave them plugged into the wall. I can just turn them off, as opposed to having to unplug from the back. Like on the S1100, I have to unplug this thing every time, and I hate doing that. So very happy with those chargers. If you don't already have one, if you're just getting into the hobby, I don't want to tell you that it's the only way to do it, because you can spend a lot less and get a charger that's going to work. But if you're going to get smart batteries, just do yourself a favor. If you're on a budget and you need to get the cheapest battery charger you can get, then get the cheapest one, meaning the best one that you can afford. And that's going to be cheaper in the long run. It will be cheaper in the short run too, because instead of having a battery that you can't charge, you're going to have a charger that will charge all of your dumb batteries and your smart batteries, because you can do anything that's not smart, you can still charge on here too. So that's why I say it's cheaper, because if you go get a $60 knockoff version of it, you're going to be disappointed because you won't be able to charge your expensive batteries. And by the way, I used to be of the mindset of buying the cheapest batteries you can find, and you could do that, especially if you're new. It's kind of nice to be able to save the money, but here's the thing I'm going to warn you about. If you get a lot of batteries and you're going to go out and you're going to be like, hey, I'm getting this plane, I want 2 batteries so I can fly it once, then I can fly it again, and I can charge my battery while I'm flying the second time. That's good thinking, but just keep in mind, if you have 2 batteries and then all of a sudden you have 200 batteries like I did, then it's extremely difficult to keep up with that many batteries. So I have a lot of batteries because of a lot of, showing off all these planes, which is really cool, and we love doing it. But the thing is, we're in a unique circumstance there. I still have trouble keeping up with these things, and I have them set to 240-hour discharge. You can set them to off, and they never discharge. You'd be throwing away the most expensive feature and best feature of these batteries, by the way. They come defaulted at 72 hours. That means that when you're done charging it, it's going to start auto discharging to the charge level after 72 hours, however long that is. Okay, so it was like 2 days. So if you set this to less, that means you're going to get more value out of that auto discharge, because the problem is you're wasting the energy that you paid the electric company to force into this thing. And so that does kind of like hurt my soul, just knowing that I'm wasting that money. But when we're getting ready to do an unbox on a new plane, I'll sit here and charge all the batteries up like every couple of weeks, just because I want them ready. And if I go out and fly, I want to have all my batteries ready, and then I can just go down and grab the plane, fly it, and go for it. So a lot of you guys don't have that flexibility because you have to go to the field and you want to just bring like all your batteries, but they're auto discharged. Well, that's why you want to get another big charger like this. You just get the big charger. The big charger is going to do it faster. It's going to do it safely, or as safe as you can make it. There's still inherent risks with everything. So, but we've been very, very happy with the smart batteries. Yes, some of you have explained and articulated how they suck so bad. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna have to disagree with you. We've never had anything better, and we've had a lot of different batteries. We've had a lot of batteries that are very good too. But back when I started getting the Turnigy heavy duties, I'd always get the highest C rating I could get, and I would still puff them all the time. And then you'd end up with this instead of being a $30 battery, which seems just crazy to me at this point in life, you might have had a $7 battery. Now, okay, but I've got 3 of them, so it's actually more like $25 worth of batteries by the time you pay a couple bucks in shipping on top of that. And then you end up with this one battery that works perfectly for like 4 or 5 years. And then you've got these batteries, and the only advantage is if you crash the plane, you've only lost $7 instead of 30. So really, at the end of the day, what happens is you spend about the same as you would on these ones. Or if these are out of stock or something like that. If you have to buy a brand that's not smart, get Onyx. We've had really good luck with the Onyx batteries. And Onyx batteries are also available at Horizon. So like if you're buying this plane, you can buy that while you're there. Don't get the regular blue E-flite packs. They're terrible. I hate them. We work with Horizon and I hate those batteries. They're garbage. I've gotten so many that have been puffed brand new. So just don't even bother. Get the Spectrum batteries are really good. I would say the bomb, but that sounds counterintuitive. So Spectrum batteries are made in a different plant than the E-flite batteries. And I know you guys are thinking, oh, Brian, you work in plants all the time. It's made on the same line. No, it's not. It's made in a different country. So you have to remember the expensive stuff is a lot more expensive, like 7 or 8 times more. So that's part of the reason why the Spectrum stuff is more expensive. It's because the cells are expensive. It's not because of the smart technology. It's because the cells are more. And these are the types of things you find out when you work with these companies. But I can tell you this. We love this Valiant. We've already done it once. We know it's going to be great. You've already seen the flight, so you know what it's all about. But the thing is, if you're still watching this and you're still trying to kind of figure out some of these details, you're at the right channel. We are here to help you. We have literally thousands of videos to help step you from where you are now, which maybe you're an intermediate pilot already, or maybe you are brand new like last week. Probably not the best plane for brand new last week, but at the same time, you could technically fly this as a relatively new pilot. Also, the NX8 is great. If you got an NX6, you can do everything we did today on the NX6. If you have an NX10, that makes me jealous. Why do you have an NX10 and I don't? I have a DX18 if I need more channels. But we just have been super happy with the Valiant. It's a great plane. And yes, there is a certain amount of, whatever plane I'm reviewing is the best plane because, like we have a lot of planes. Do I have a favorite? No, I have too many to have favorites. If I had favorites, it would be very bad because I'd walk through the room in our basement where we've got like hundreds of planes sitting and I would just like feel really bad. Like they're all watching me. Like, why am I not your favorite? Why am I not your favorite? I go down there and I feel bad that I haven't flown some of these planes for a while because there's just like so many of them. So it's great. It's a great problem to have. So if you're looking for something for your next plane, you want to keep the budget tight. You don't need floats. You aren't after the leading edge slats and the LEDs that you're going to get with that Turbo Timber 1.5. This is definitely going to be up against the Turbo Timber 1.5. Keep in mind, this is smaller by a little bit. It's a lot easier to transport. This tail is half as big as the Timber. So that makes a huge difference with where you can put it. Plus the landing gear are a lot simpler. The Timber is going to do way better off-road in rough areas. If you have well-manicured grass, these wheel pants aren't going to be a problem. However, the landing gear on this are a far cry from the Timber. Just to keep in mind, dollars to donuts, I feel like the Timber, if you can use the floats, it might be a better value in that sense. But keep in mind, the price difference is there. It's not like it's the same price. Also, another good analog for this, if you want something that's simpler, but still very fun, the RV7 recently came out. And we've actually had that film for a while, but we had to hold off because of some shipping delays from China over at Horizon. So that's part of the reason why it took forever for you guys to see the footage. That's an awesome plane. It does have flaps. It does have fixed gear. It's a very similar radio setup to this one. Very good plane, very intense, very small. That's only a 1.1 meter and low wing, but also a lot harder to fly and a lot more crazy. This one's gonna fly more like a Bush STOL plane. And this isn't really a STOL plane in my opinion. It pushes the envelope because it's got way more than scale power, and especially on 3S, it's incredible. But you can fly at scale if you'd like. This thing would probably fly on 2S actually. Not that I've tried it, so don't ask me to try it because I don't have a 2S in this size. But very, very good plane. If you're thinking about getting it, if you're on the fence, I love it. It's a great plane. It is a lot like the Timber. So if you already have the Timber, you might run into the predicament where you're like, hey, why am I getting this plane versus the Timber? Well, if you've already got the Timber, maybe you've already got the solution. But that being said, great plane, very fun. If you're after general aviation planes, there's only so many of them out there. So you might like this as just an alternative to the Timber. This one is harder to fly than the Timber. It's also equally crazy for power, but maybe a little bit less because it's not a 4S platform per se. I think you can still get away with it, but I'm not gonna try it if they don't recommend it in the manual, just because I don't want to tell you guys to try it and then have it catch on fire. Also, the wheel pants are a factor. The new Evo loads from the top instead of the bottom, which is a huge improvement. Pretty much any bottom loader plane, it's a disadvantage in my book. But this plane is not hard to load from the bottom. Like our recently reviewed FMS Skytrainer, that was a real pain in the neck to load from the bottom. This one's actually not that bad to load from the bottom. So definitely got a lot of things. This plane checks so many boxes, but it is very similar to the 1.5 meter Turbo Timber Evo. And I know I'm gonna get that question, that's why I'm going through this right now. Also the 1.1 meter T28 is a lot different flying plane. It does not have flaps. It is very fun to fly, very good plane in the beginner lineup sort of series, if you wanna call it that. But I would say that if you need a beginner plane that's similar to this, you're gonna get a lot more forgiveness from the 1.5 meter Apprentice STS, okay, which is gonna be your 1.5 meter. It's a little bit bigger. It's got a little bit less narrow wing chord. It's also a lot less maneuverable and crazy. It's gonna fly slower. It's gonna be more forgiving. It's also gonna be a glorious tricycle experience as opposed to tail dragger. Tail dragger's not hard to fly, but there is some things that come into that. So what other planes are super similar to this that we need to mention? I would say it's basically between this and then of course, you know, you've got the 1.1 meter Aero Scout, which is a great beginner plane, totally out of this class. If you're just coming from an Aero Scout, you feel totally comfortable, you're out of safe doing tricks, and you can do it consistently. Maybe you go into safe once in a while from, you know, like getting off put by a wind gust or something like that. You could totally do this still, okay? You'll just be flying with safe for a little bit.
Can our oldest do this?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Our oldest can definitely fly this plane. He's flown the Carbon Z Cub, so he can fly pretty much any of them.
True.
But I would say, oh, and then if you're comparing this to the next size up, which would of course be like the Carbon Z Cub size, where you're 2.1 meters, which by the way, make no mistake, just because this is 1.3 and that's 2.1 doesn't seem like that big of a difference until you put them side by side. This is about as long as one of the wings. And this plane, the rudder surface is easily 2.5 times bigger.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's gonna be this tall.
Yep.
So on the Carbon Z Cessna 150T with the tail dragger, beautiful plane, just flew that the other night. It flies on 6S. It flies very powerfully. It'll do everything. It's got the LEDs. It's got all the stuff you want. It's very cool, but totally different ball of wax. I mean, it's harder to transport. It's a lot more money. And it's not just the price of the plane. You're talking about the difference in charger, the difference in batteries, but you've got the same radio. So if you're working your way up to that Carbon Z Cessna 150 tail dragger, this would be a great middle step. And it flies a lot like it, only small and cheaper. So really happy with this plane. I'm glad you guys came along for the ride and flight. We have so much more on the channel that's gonna help get you where you need to be. If you have questions, leave them in the comments below. I try to reply to comments as quick as possible. It usually takes about 3 or 4 days when we're on average. Sometimes it's a little bit longer when we get really backlogged. But you know, a lot of times I'm answering comments on the same day that you're asking them, like an hour later. So here on Brian Phillips RC, we really know that personal touch is something that we bring that the others don't. Not that they have anything, you know, they're doing anything wrong. It's just that the sailors are huge. They've got, you know, a much bigger following. And so they just can't keep up. And I don't fault them for that. You know, and you've got the Petnik brothers over in the Slovakia, and they do their thing, and we're a lot like them. We don't edit our footage out. We try to share everything, even the crashes and stuff occasionally. Sometimes we take that stuff out because it just doesn't look good. But the thing is, we all, you know, the guys that are working with Horizon, we all know each other. We all know what's going on. And we have a deep respect for each other. So, you know, it's like it's a lot harder than it looks to do this, just so you guys know. But keeping up with the comments is hard, and that's one of the things that we bring that's special that the other guys don't bring. And I mean, I don't even think Ryan keeps up with everything, and he's got a lot smaller following. But The thing is, again, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus for decisions they make, but I can tell you right now, that's one of the hardest things about this channel is just keeping up with comments. Because no matter what you do, no matter if you got new footage, you got old footage, we're getting comments from videos that we put out like 5 years ago. Yeah. So it really never ends. Once you put it out there into the YouTube universe, it's out there for the world to see, no matter how embarrassing it was. So, but that's also part of the reason why you guys keep coming back, and we appreciate you for doing that. If you want to help support us the best and easiest way, buy the planes, buy the stuff that you like, that you're going to buy anyway. You know, so it doesn't really cost you a penny. What happens is then Horizon or Banggood or whoever we're working with on that particular video will send us a small commission. I mean, they save it up and then we, you know, get paid occasionally. So it's not like an everyday thing. But that's how we make our money. That's how we fund this channel. And so we don't mean to pull any punches about that. We work with these guys. And so you're like, well, but how can you be honest with us? Well, just because I have integrity. And like, if this plane wasn't great, I wouldn't tell you that. If it was terrible, you'd be able to tell just because you've seen me. I don't fake it very good. You know, it's like when you open a Christmas present as a kid, you know, your parents are like, smile and say thanks and all that. And of course I'd always do that because I'd get in trouble otherwise. You know, the same thing is true here. Like if I open it and I don't like it, you guys can tell. Because I'm not good at faking it. And plus the other thing too is I want you guys to know, if you don't like the Valiant and you like the Timber better, then just get the Timber. They're both made by the same manufacturer. They both want us to sell either one of those planes to you if you're a, you know, a viable customer. And I can tell you this, there's reasons why you would get this instead of the Timber. And they're good reasons. I still think the Timber is a more broad appeal. It's gonna check a little bit more boxes. But this plane is awesome too. So I don't want it to get missed in the mix. And so that's part of the reason what I'm getting at is that our integrity is one reason why we would tell you what we believe. And then secondly, I mean, you see us flying, so you know what my skills are, you know what I can do and what I can't do. And you've got 6 years of history to go off of watching us progress through this. And you kind of make up your own minds. Even if I say I love it, well, you can call BS if you want, I don't care. But there's gonna be other planes. I don't care what plane you pick. I just want you to be happy in this environment of RC flight. And there's so many choices anymore. It's overwhelming. And the deeper you get into it, the more choices you're going to find. And so one of the ways that you can help to sort through let's say you got a $200 budget between the other 70 choices that you have, you know, I want your $200 to be well spent. And that's not necessarily, you know, like, oh, well, he doesn't work with him, so I can't buy it here at Motion. Well, I'm not gonna say that Motion does anything wrong, but they don't work with us for some reason. Maybe we're too honest for them. I don't know. You know, Aero, same thing. They don't send us stuff. We don't work with them. Why? I don't know. Do they have something to hide? I kind of doubt it. Maybe they're just really happy with somebody else that's doing videos for them. I don't know. All I can say is Horizon works with us. We work with Banggood. We work with, you know, Amazon, all these different companies. We don't care who it is, as long as we have a new plane to bring to you guys so that you can learn what's good about it, what's bad about it, how terrible it was to put together, which, you know, we show the entire assembly too. That's something we do here. So just between us and the other choices on YouTube, we want you guys to know that we do appreciate you, and the easiest way to support us is just buy the stuff from the links. If you don't like buying this particular plane, you still want to support us, we have Patreon and PayPal too. So anyway, have I answered like every possible rebuttal and question?
And then some. And now we know why you don't get Christmas presents.
That's right, exactly. That's right. So as you can see, I have totally squandered my time, and so we can't fly this tonight, so I have to wait until tomorrow, which sucks. But such is life in the RC world. If you're watching this long video, we really appreciate you. We have more just like it right around the bend. Stay tuned, guys. Thanks for watching, and come back for more.